Hello again. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you're watching this. God grant me this serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. That'll be the through line during our time here this morning. I'd like to drill down on that, although I'm obviously not the first. I'd like to dig into that prayer and kind of see what it might have to offer us in terms of guidance for the journey we're all on right now. Now, let me start by saying thank you once again for allowing me into your space, sort of more so than usual in these virtual spaces. I'm doing my best during this time to sort of embrace what's unique about it. Obviously, I'm not diminishing any of the pain and suffering and the challenges that are happening, but I'm looking at moments like these for us and thinking, well, there's going to come a time that we're back face to face, and this will have been a blip and perhaps an opportunity to have some really treasured moments in sharing this kind of a space together with you at home, potentially in your pajamas, watching this. So let's dig in. As ever, it's my hope to give you something that you can take with you today as we make our way through this talk. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. What's interesting to me right up front with this prayer is it feels really fundamental as a sort of reflection of the experience of so many different faith traditions. So it has this sort of eternal sense to it. And yet when Reinhold Niebuhr, who I may be pronouncing his name wrong, when Reinhold Niebuhr wrote this, it was in the 20th century. So this prayer is essentially a little less than 100 years old, which is remarkable to me because its his wisdom feels so ancient. So we continue on navigating this transformational, unprecedented moment in our lives. And I read a t-shirt recently online that said something to the extent of can I have precedented, please? Enough unprecedented. In the midst of all of this, I keep hearing a lot of talk about how confusing this time is. And I understand, I'm not trying to play semantics with that. I understand that it is confusing, that a lot of what we understood to be stable and fixed before has obviously proven to not be as we navigate these profoundly uncertain waters. But I think rather than being confusing, what we're actually being offered, if we listen closely, we're not being offered confusion, we're being offered clarity. In so many ways, the noise of our lives that had been and before times is gone. There may be different kind of noise, but in the absence of that noise, I think it's less that we've been offered confusion and more that we've been offered clarity. I think we have been given through the contrast of the moment, this powerful, in sharp relief, new understanding of what was working and what wasn't in our lives individually and collectively. I hear a lot of people talking about that in their lives individually. We'll talk more about that in a moment. And I hear that coming up a lot in our lives collectively, particularly in the United States, as we look at, well, clearly that income inequality, that was a problem. That's so clear now. The treatment of so-called minorities in our society, that was clearly a problem. Our healthcare, clearly a problem. These are all things that need to be addressed. And so I think that we're being given an opportunity in this moment to step free of the notion that we're in this great time of confusion. Instead, embrace it as a great time of clarity. When I was touring full-time, I was blessed to do that for many years. A really treasured time in my life. Hope to get back to some elements of that at some point. But I had the great pleasure of serving in a lot of high school and colleges situations, a lot of camps and conferences during the summer and also during the rest of the year. And very often what we would do in those environments was experiential education. And if you're not familiar with what experiential education is and how it differs, what we're doing right now is sort of lecture-based traditional education, if you will. Not that I'm trying to educate you, but that's what sort of this kind of platform is when somebody's speaking at you. And experiential education, as the name implies, is you learn by doing. The whole process is about learning by doing. Okay, great. There's a notion within that learning experience of what we call teachable moments, which again, forgive me if I'm over-explaining for you here, but a teachable moment is essentially, hey, you run up against something that's outside of the plan that you'd had. What can we learn from it? Or something occurs, like in the specific context of what I'm talking about, when you run a group through a high ropes course or something. What did we learn by the things that happened while we were doing that? You're honoring and you're seizing the opportunity to grow and become more of who you most want to be by looking at teachable moments. All right, I said all that to say this. Obviously, a big topic of conversation these days is schools. Sounds like a storm's rolling in. A big topic of conversation these days is schools and reopening schools. And it's probably no mystery to you at this point. I'm very much on the progressive side of the ideological spectrum. And I can speak from that side. I don't know anybody who doesn't want schools reopened. It's a question of how we do that. And in that conversation around that, what keeps coming up is what's missing, what students are losing out on in the absence of school. And I think that there's more than one layer. There's the actual education process and what's most effective in the structures that we have. And then there's also the process of the moments that you get, the socialization, like we saw in the spring, the opportunity to go to your prom or your graduation. And I've been hearing a lot of truly heartfelt lamenting and gnashing of teeth over this and what our students are missing out on. It's not unlike the gnashing of teeth I'm hearing about people in the adults in their lives and all the things they're missing out on. And I get it. It's true. It's intense and we need to change it as soon as we can. However, surely one of the things that children should be taught in schools, by their parents, by the village that we are raising children, surely one of the most important lessons is how to accept, endure, and rise to the profound uncertainties of life. The reality that life ebbs and flows and that what you thought was certain one day could be gone the next. Surely, ingraining that, integrating that into our children's way of addressing the world, if they can accept and endure and rise to those kind of moments, that is surely a valuable thing to learn, right? Well, you're welcome, because 2020 has brought the mother of all teachable moments. This is as big as it gets for teachable moments. This is the biggest opportunity we have to really offer that lesson in a meaningful way to our children and to each other. So what does that look like? God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. I'm going to dig into playing that out. I'm going to use a little bit lighter stuff than I usually do. Let me do this. I got a couple of thoughts in mind. It's fun with this video stuff, by the way. One of the things that's fun is that I get to kind of play with it and look back and go, that worked, that didn't work. I can kind of redo if I want. But as a result, everything you're seeing is fresh, and it's just coming from my heart and head. So I live in a multi-generational home, which is a fancy way of saying my folks and I live together. And there are reasons for that, and they're my reasons. They're life happening in my world, and my parents generously taken me in, and that's been a tremendous gift, and has given us a lot of quality time together. And obviously something that it's been a minute, a few more minutes than we expected, but that's where we are. And let me tell you a little bit about my parents, and there's reasons I'm telling you all these stories. My parents are extraordinary people. I think by objective measures, they're extraordinary people. Both are retired in their mid-70s. Both had very successful careers. My mother in education, my dad in the corporate world, the HR world. And by successful, in our house, that's about impact, it's about reach, it's about the difference you made in people's lives. That's how we define success. They both had very successful careers. And I think that my siblings and I had hoped that when they came time to retire, when it came time for them to retire, that perhaps they might settle into some leisure. But if I had to define my parents' version of retirement in 2 words, it would be relentlessly active. These people do not know the meaning of slow down and lounge around. And I know from conversations that that's because fundamentally they feel so blessed to have lived the lives they've lived and feel called to service. So I can't turn around in our house without them being out feeding somebody or building a house for somebody or responding to some disaster or going to some class to in an interfaith group to where Jewish people and Muslims and Catholics are coming together to learn. These people are extraordinary. They are very, very active people. I'm a reasonably active person and they make me look lazy. And all that is until COVID. And then despite the fact that we are all active, relatively healthy people, they are also in their mid-70s. All 3 of us have pre-existing conditions. And so overnight, we found ourselves in a situation and find ourselves in a situation with sort of a big scarlet C on our door that says, we can't go out for the foreseeable future. It's changed my work life, my personal life. It's just not safe for us yet. So that's meant some huge changes for my relentlessly active parents. And I learned very early on that I've been locked in a home with a couple of overachievers for the foreseeable future. And we've done pretty well. And I said all that to kind of bring that up. We've done pretty well, all doing lots of projects. I'm trying to learn new skills that allow me to work remotely. And it's been a fun process. And there's a few mechanisms we've been using for entertainment during this time of being at home. One of them I'll share first. I'm going to share both of them. I'm laughing at myself because I can't believe I'm about to share this. So what's emerged is that Friday nights, my mother typically does a Zoom game night with some friends of hers, and my father and I take the night to have a movie night. Back in the day, in my 20s and mid-30s, if I found myself in the Atlanta area and my dad and I had a night to ourselves, a movie night looked like a Chevy Chase movie or something. Slapstick comedy, goofiness. My dad's tastes have changed. A movie night now looks like Hallmark. And I decided a while ago to just embrace that and give him this moment, this couple hours, to enjoy his Hallmark movies. And yes, they're growing on me, but I'm hoping that will pass. They're decidedly pleasant, of course. And I said all that to say this. We were watching a movie a few Friday nights back. And the movie was sort of a while you were sleeping sort of plot. I don't know if you remember that movie from I think it was the early 90s. Sandra Bullock film. But in essence, the female protagonist and the male protagonist, the love interest, because it was a romance, shocker. She accidentally hits him on her bike and he gets hurt and gets amnesia. And so the movie is about her trying to help him remember his life. His life has been totally reset. He's been removed from his life. It's not at all. He wakes up in a hospital bed with a totally different life. Sound familiar? And in the midst of that, he's trying to connect the dots, try to pull in pieces that are disparate now and don't make sense, and trying to understand who he is going forward. now that he's going into a new life. And there's this wonderful moment where he's struggling with this, and this love interest in the movie says to him, as you remember who you were, you get to decide who you want to be. As you remember who you were, you get to decide who you want to be. I know. A Hallmark movie. That's some deep stuff. And it's super relevant to where we are right now, to the journey we are on right now together. As we realize more and more with every passing day that what was before is forever changed, and where we are going, we don't know yet. But as we begin to remember who we were, we get to decide who we want to be. What parts of our lives serve us, which didn't. What parts of our culture serve us, which don't. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So how do we navigate that process of building a new life, of re-entering life? How can that serenity prayer be a guide? So there's another thing we've been doing in my house, and a lot of houses I hear from what I see on TV, puzzles. And we are puzzling our brains out. The dining room has become puzzle central. And there's kind of forever an ongoing puzzle on the dining room table that we'll come in and putter around with periodically. I've gotten in the habit of doing it in between class sessions on my computer. That's computer, apparently. Anyway, we have one such puzzle that has confounded us. That's been sitting on our table for like 6 weeks now. It's this 1,000-piece puzzle. It's like a watercolor painting of a San Francisco scene. They're tiny little pieces, and this puzzle maker, who apparently is of the devil, created like 4 shapes, and that's it. So you can't even use that sort of puzzle trick of going, oh, I need a puzzle that looks like this shape. You have to just kind of figure it out through the different hues of color. It's like you're working with this profound problem, and it's just totally overwhelming. Sound familiar? I know. Parallels in Hallmark and in puzzles. Can't make this stuff up. Well, I guess I kind of can. In any event, I had this moment that I feel like is a really good analogy for the process of applying the serenity prayer with the puzzle. I was puttering around on this little tree part, which was reasonably easy. I could see a few pieces to put together there. Sort of like figuring out how to go to the grocery store right now. I could figure that part out. Okay, cool. But the thing I realized as I was working on that easy part was that I had this dread in the back of my head. I had this thing that I was really afraid to do, and it was the sky. I mean, when there's only 4 shapes, and the pieces are tiny, and the sky is nothing but shades of blue, how in the world? And it's a huge part of the puzzle. Easily a third to half the puzzle is sky. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. I realized in the midst of that, I was resisting that. I was pushing back on that. I was going, la, 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 I can't see this part that's coming up. And then finally I went, you know what I need to do? Is accept that I'm going to have to do the sky. And it's not going to be any easier when I get to it. It is what it is. And when I accepted that, it changed my relationship to it. The courage to change the things I can. The courage to change the things I can. So I took that puzzle. I went, all right, I accept that there's this sky that's overwhelming, that I don't know how to navigate, that there's no easy way to do. And I gathered up all the blue pieces and I set them all aside. And then I just looked at them and I went, is there anything else I can think to do? Nope. I just need to start taking one piece at a time, and just playing with them. And just start seeing if I can get a rhythm. And lo and behold, the sky began to come together and is now fully together. I'm moving on to the street, which is a whole other thing. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. The wisdom is in that acceptance piece, and then the engaging piece, the taking action, right? That's the discerning between those two. What does that look like? And I hope that metaphor worked for you. I thought it was really interesting. It's so simple because I'm trying to puzzle together my life right now. We're all trying to puzzle together our lives. And what does this look like in the context of life? And here's hoping the power doesn't go out in the midst of the storm. I think what I'm learning is that the learning around courage, the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, is about recognizing what I'm resisting. What am I pushing back on? What don't I want to look at? That's where I'm being called to accept. And the courage to change the things I can is where I'm being called back to, let me grab it here, back to here, back to my power again, once again, to this space, the only space that I have influence, which is, inside this thing. It's not out there. It's not out there. It's in here. So getting back in here is where that courage to change the things I can lives. And the wisdom to know the difference, which we'll get to. But in the context of this, what I've been seeing is this. I'm going to put it in the context of a couple things. One of my best friends is extremely educated in health and nutrition. And after becoming traditionally educated, she educated herself in communities like this, a lot of people embrace sort of the alternative therapies in health and wellness. And it's been traumatic for her. I'm not being overly dramatic. It has been traumatic for her watching how this is being handled, the health pandemic in particular. And she's been just raging against it, driving herself nuts. And I understand this because I've been doing the same thing. Being at home, I'm consuming vast amounts of news, and I'm deeply informed from a wide variety of sources about all the layers of things we're facing. And so I find myself ranting around the house. Why are they doing this? And why are they doing that? And why aren't they doing this? And why aren't they doing that? And it's not useful. It's not good for my blood pressure. And it's exactly what I cannot change. And just as I said to my friend, I said, I think it's time for you to accept that you cannot change. I said, are you in the room? Are you at the table with the decision makers? And she was like, no, of course not. I said, do you have access to those people? No, I do not. Okay. Well, then you're being called to accept what you cannot change. Accept what's happening in this moment on that level you don't have power over. But the courage to change the things you can. Well, on another level, you do have power. I do have power. Regardless of how I'm feeling, or actually, even better, informed by how I'm feeling. Again, the confusion, the angst, it's not confusion, it's clarity. If I accept the things I cannot change, there's a sky. It's going to need to be put together. Resisting it's not going to help. There is a life that's going to need to be reassembled. From employment to personal life to health. Resisting is not going to do that. Being angry at what's being done is not going to do that. But getting back in here and going, as I said to my friend, what would you be doing differently? What would you be doing differently if you were in charge? Great. How can you start implementing those changes in your life? How can you start communicating the value of those changes to people you love, who you feel like you can talk to? How can you bring those into this space where you have power? The courage to accept the things I can, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. There's a woman by the name of Lulu at Unity Birmingham, where I've had the opportunity to serve some as well. And she said something, we were talking very early on in this, and she said, over the phone, she said, I don't know what I would do without some kind of way, with a capital W, without some kind of way, some kind of practice. I don't know what I'd do without that practice right now. Well, that's the gift that people like you and me have brought into our lives by the foundation that we came into this with. As Melanie keeps mentioning, as I've mentioned in the times that I've been able to serve you during this pandemic, it's critical to come back to our core, to come back to our foundation. And what that looks like to me, and in many spiritual traditions, is to get quiet, to get still. Be still and know that I am God. To get still so that you can listen, so that you can feel and hear what you are resisting. You can feel and hear what you have the power to impact and influence. You can feel and hear those things when you create the quiet for them to emerge. That's where the wisdom to know the difference lives. And so, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change is a call to move away from the suffering that you're feeling in the presence of pain, and instead accept what is so that you can learn from it. The courage to change the things I can is about getting in a space where you can ask what is mine to do and respond to what emerges in the small and big ways, and start putting those pieces together a little bit at a time. And the wisdom to know the difference is entirely about getting yourself in a place to be a listener, to be a better listener to what you're being offered. In this time, not of confusion, but of clarity. This time, yes, of tragedy, also of opportunity. This masterclass of a teachable moment that 2020 is. And we will get to the after. What will we have learned while we were in it? God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, to release that resistance, the courage to change the things I can, to act where I can, in the new clarity provided by that which I was resisting, by that which I think is possible, and the wisdom to know the difference through the quiet spaces that I create in my life, to be able to listen more deeply to the gifts life is offering me. I'm going to share one more song with you to kind of tie this up with a bow. I hope you found something useful in this. I hope you found something entertaining in this. And let me get my guitar and we'll get that going. Okay, let's properly wrap this up now. Thank you again for listening and for opening yourself to this. I hope you found something in it for you. And thanks for riding out this summer storm. What an interesting thing for this moment, right? Like I said, I'm going to wrap up with a poem, actually, and a song from a guy named David Wilcox. David Wilcox, spelled just like it sounds. I hope you'll check him out. And this is a song and a poem that I first heard 30 years ago. And I remember where I was when I heard it. You know those moments? So I'm thrilled and honored to share it with you now. Imagine Mother Mary, quite contrary. "Wake up," she said, "you dreaming fool. Don't throw your life away. Because life's too short and you're too smart to want to hurt yourself that way. What's this talk about the fellow man? It's catch as catch can, understand? Muscle and struggle and get what you can, and you'll never get anywhere at all, young man. And what's this talk about loving everybody and trying to be a neighbor and helping out your brother? It's all fine and dandy, but you're getting a little carried away," is what she'd say. She said, "I'm not saying that love ain't fine, but every little thing's got its place and time. There are people out there who want what's mine and are gonna try and take it away. So save your love for those who care. And buy some clothes and wash your hair and just relax. Don't you dare start dreaming about saving the world. And Jesus said, yes, Mom. Do I dare believe and let love lead my life? Could I not believe and leave that love behind? Do I dare believe and let love lead my life? Could I not believe and leave that love behind? You ask me if I'm faithful. You ask me if I'm true. I answer with a question, 'cause it's all that I can do. Do I dare believe and let love lead my life? Could I not believe and leave that love behind? Do I dare believe, let love lead my life? Could I not believe and leave that love behind? I don't have all the answers. Can't explain it all. I'm not sure where I'm going, but I think I hear a call. I will lead my life in light. I will lead my life in love, and I will lead my life in light. Lead my life in love. Do I dare? Do I dare? Do I dare? God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And so it is. Be good to yourself and to each other. Much love.